Hey, you want to be nasty media when you're nasty piles of garbage? I'm going to come after you. No more Mr. Nice Guy. I'm an overnight success, 25 years in the making. I'm Alex Jones. This is the Info War. And all I want to see is America succeed. I love flyover country. I love the East Coast, the West Coast. I love Michigan. I love Texas. I love Indiana. I love California. I love black people, Hispanics, whites, everybody else. I love the Easter Bunny. As long as it isn't trying to rape me and my family. Yeah, I got no friends in the establishment, and thank God they can't be seen with me. I don't want to be associated with them. I'm feeling mean. I want to take a few phone calls and a few other things with Roger. He's punching out, drive across town to a BBC interview. But it really is amazing. When I'm here with national TV, national radio, they come interview me. I do a few of them. They go, listen, we're really listeners. They got to do a hit piece. I'm sorry I got to do this, but it won't be too bad. But watch what you do. They'll take it out of context. And it's just, they go, yeah, we're mercenaries. It's horrible. They almost pay us nothing now. It's all collapsing. You're absolutely right. What do we do? Can I have a job? So, I mean, they're running out of gas. We're exploding. They're imploding. And it's because we have goodwill for the average person. And folks know that we're reaching out and trying to empower humanity. Roger, I want to move quick to go to calls. As I promised, folks want to talk to you and talk about action against George Soros. Mark in Oregon has been holding before you got here. During the break, I said, what do you want to cover next? You said, why isn't that a-hole arrested? And you mentioned it, so I'm going to have you talk about that and then go to Mark.
Yeah, look, I'm not an attorney, but I do know that paying people to advocate violence and assassination of an American president is against the law. George Soros was a Nazi collaborator. He's a criminal. Have federal marshals go to wherever he is and pick him up. Have a friendly country extradite him. Let him stand trial and pay the penalty.
Yeah, let's send him to the Russians. They really like him.
Yeah, look, I think the Hungarians are going to get him first. This guy is a stone cold.
Yeah, they had 1 million people march in Hungary against him. The whole world gets he's the guy.
Right, so why hasn't he been arrested? I guarantee you that if there was some billionaire going around advocating the assassination of Barack Obama, he would have been detained. He would have been charged, as he should have been. But for Soros to continue to this and to continue pouring money into the criminal David Brock, the money launderer, so he can continue to smear Trump is an outrage.
If the globalists were really going to back off, Trump would let them scurry away. They're not going to. So let me just give everybody the big announcement. We're already basically in a soft civil war in this country. And the globalists are really looking at going into high gear. That's why Soros and the entire Fortune 100 basically all gave, the lowest was $2 million the week after the inauguration or the week after the election went in November. They all gave, Soros gave hundreds of millions after. Some companies gave 10 million, 20 million, 5 million, 3 million, 2 million. You know, Kellogg's gave 2 million and then 3 million. They gave hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars for what you're now seeing, these marches and the violence and all the rest of it. They're not just doing that for no reason. They're planning something big. So keep your eyes open, your ears up, and your heads down, because when I say head down, I mean when they're shooting at you politically, we need to be popping up, taking them out politically, exposing what trash they are. So I think it's good that Trump and Drudge and all of us expose their lies. But I think we should just expose their lies and say, oh, look, more fraud from them. We know they're going to, once we catch CNN and ABC News and NBC News and the BBC and everybody putting out fake inauguration photos from right when the gates opened and doing time lapses where they cut in the middle, showing people emptying out in the evening, using every deception they've got on earth. Once you see that happening, just point out it's a fraud and move on. Because they're distracting. We know they're liars. We know they're scum. And they are losing. The American people are seeing through it, and that's why they are panicking so hard. The fact that he's so brazen and so out in the open only will accelerate the planetary awakening to their tyranny. Soros, quote, proud of donating $500,000 to overturn Brexit vote. Amazing. Proud to be involved in $5 billion to overthrow the elected government in Ukraine 40 years ago and start that whole crisis, and then bring in 10 million military-age men from the Middle East. And now the EU says, give us more funding, give us an EU army, or we can't protect you from the migrant ghettos that will become, quote, nuclear bombs in the future. Create the crisis, offer the solution, the Hegelian dialectic.
Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. And today that new world is struggling to be born, a world quite different from the one we've known, a world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle, a world in which nations recognize the shared responsibility for freedom and justice, a world where the strong respect the rights of the weak. We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
In this analysis, the direct connection between the Rockefellers and the creation of the United Nations organization will be made. First, it should be noted that the organization that preceded the United Nations, the League of Nations, received a significant amount of support from Rockefeller-related organizations. In 1927, John D. Rockefeller Jr. provided the League of Nations with $2 million to enhance its international relations library and promote peace through knowledge and understanding. This library of the League of Nations later became known as the United Nations Office at Geneva when the League transferred its assets to the United Nations. According to UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, in a statement praising the Rockefeller family's past and present support of international organizations, the interest from that original $2 million loan still provides approximately $150,000 every biennium to the United Nations. The Rockefeller Foundation was also heavily involved with the transition from the League of Nations to the United Nations, as documented in the article The Rockefeller Foundation and the Transition from the League of Nations to the UN by Ludovic Tornes of the University of Geneva. Further connections could be drawn between the Rockefellers and the League of Nations, but for the sake of brevity, we will move on to the United Nations. This Rockefeller support of the United Nations continued after the creation of the UN and continues to this day. It would be too much to list all of the ways that Rockefeller-related organizations contribute to the United Nations today, but their influence can be seen through examples like the Rockefeller Foundation providing grants to the United Nations, or the Rockefeller Brothers Fund funding the United Nations Foundation. More important, though, than the motive to make some money off of a land deal was the Rockefeller vision of a one-world government, as revealed on page 405 of David Rockefeller's autobiography, Memoirs. It is in this passage that David reveals his family's ultimate goal. Quote, "For more than a century, ideological extremists at either end of the political spectrum have seized upon well-publicized incidents such as my encounter with Castro to attack the Rockefeller family for the inordinate influence they claim we wield over American political and economic institutions. Some even believe we are part of a secret cabal working against the best interest of the United States, characterizing my family and me as internationalists and of conspiring with others around the world to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world, if you will. If that's the charge, I stand guilty, and I am proud of it." End quote. The United Nations fits well into the Rockefeller family goal to build a more integrated global political and economic structure, one world. Through United Nations programs such as Agenda 21, local decision-making power is being eroded and being replaced by regional governments that continue to become more centralized. In the analysis titled The Problems with Connecticut Climate Change Policy, Part 4, The Rockefeller Connection, the connections between Agenda 21, the Rockefellers, and current events taking place in Connecticut are detailed. Through these connections, a pattern emerges of a system being created that is designed to reduce the decision-making power of individual towns, cities, and states, transferring that power over to large, centralized, non-elected bureaucracies.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order. And now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is the very real prospect of a new world order. In the words of Winston Churchill, a world order in which the principles of justice and fair play protect the weak against the strong. A world where the United Nations, freed from Cold War stalemate, is poised to fulfill the historic vision of its founders. And that's why I wanted to speak to you today about the new world taking shape around us, about the prospects for a new world order now within our reach. In the coming weeks, I'll be talking in some detail about the possibility of a new world order emerging after the Cold War. But today, I want to discuss another aspect of that order. You see, as the Cold War drew to an end, we saw the possibilities of a new order in which nations work together and to achieve stability. As old threats recede, new threats emerge. The quest for the new world order is in part a challenge to keep the dangers of disorder at bay. We must build on the successes of Desert Storm to give new shape and momentum to this new world order. Only when this transformation is complete will we be able to take full measure of the opportunities presented by this new and evolving world order. The New World Order really is a tool for addressing a new world of possibilities. This order gains its mission and shape not just from shared interests, but from shared ideals.
The President, George Bush, has talked time and time again about a new world order. And this is the best chance to begin to establish the new world order. And that's why the stakes are so high.
From 1945 and the end of the war through 1989 and the end of the Cold War, we had a worldview. Republican and Democratic presidents alike, from Harry Truman to George Bush, stood for freedom and stood for certain propositions that would make America strong and healthy and grow the middle class and shrink poverty and stand against communism. And after 1989, President Bush said, and it's a phrase that I often use myself, that we needed a new world order, and instead it looks like we got a lot of disorder. And we still, and after 9/11, we've been more sensitive.
But it is the awareness itself that will drive the change. And one of the ways it will drive the change is through global governance and global agreements.
Now, much has been said by the Secretary of State and others about a new world order, about a defining moment in history. I have no doubt about the potential of this moment to be defining in terms of history, but that definition can be negative as well as positive. And how negative or positive it will be will depend on what kind of new world order we really create. Can it truly be said that the United States of America, trading off better treatment to China for an abstention on a vote, cozying up to Syria with its record of support for terrorism, or making promises to other countries in exchange for a hold your coat, you go ahead and take the risks and casualties endorsement, can it truly be said that these create a new world order? Can it really be said that we're building a new world order when it's almost exclusively the United States who will be fighting in the desert? Not alone, but almost. Displaying pride and impatience and implementing what essentially amounts to a Pax Americana. Is that a new world order? Can it really be said that this is a true new world order when it lacks a true United Nations collective security effort with the full measure of international cooperation and burden sharing which that should carry?
With the end of the Cold War, Henry Kissinger pointed out in his superb book on diplomacy, he said, "None of the most important countries which must build a new world order have had any experience with the multi-state system that is emerging. Never before has a new world order had to be assembled from so many different perceptions or on so global a scale. Nor has any previous order had to combine the attributes of the historic balance of power system with global democratic opinion and the exploding technology of the contemporary period. That was written in 1994, and it may be even more relevant today.
As I've told you before, because I love it so much, they also created the Great Seal of the United States. And that Great Seal of the United States has on it, Novus Order Seclorum, a new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
There is a chance for the President of the United States to use this disaster to carry out what his father, a phrase his father used, I think, only once, and hasn't been used since, and that is a new world order.
The conflict with Saddam Hussein, which he handled so superbly in a short-term sense, but he kept talking about a new world order. And then President Bush, at the end of that war, promised he would give 4 graduation addresses, 4 commencement addresses, describing that new world order and what America's role was going to be in it. It turned out he gave one of those addresses and canceled the other 3 and talked about something else. That's what, because they weren't.
And this present window of opportunity during which a truly peaceful and interdependent world order might be built will not be here for too long.
You believe deeply in your system, and we believe just as deeply in our system. It is not our common beliefs that have brought us together here, but our common interests and our common hopes. The interest that each of us has to maintain our independence and the security of our peoples, and the hope that each of us has to build a new world order in which nations and peoples with different systems and different values can live together in peace, respecting one another while disagreeing with one another, letting history rather than the battlefield be the judge.
It's past the point of talking. We know historically that the global governance the sort of agenda to these issues is very hard to try and, with all the best intentions, it's very hard to actually activate. We're seeing that right now. We're seeing a lot of fragmentation going on in Copenhagen, a lot of different agendas pulling in different directions. And
the closest we came to the dream was when we were doing THX and everybody was writing their scripts. Everybody was hanging out at the pool table drinking cappuccinos and waxing philosophically about the New World Order and everything.
Type 1 civilization is a connected civilization, a single global culture, a single global language, global communication, global politics. We see this beginning now. We see it emerging all around us. The European countries are binding together slowly, forming the EU. NAFTA has been formed in North America. Eventually we will see the rise of a single world government. We will see a single economy.
2009 is also the first year of global governance, with the establishment of the G20 in the middle of the financial crisis. The climate conference in Copenhagen is another step towards the global management of our planet. Our mission, our presidency, is one of hope, supported by acts and by deeds.
Leaders come together and establish a framework for global governance, not a world government, but sensible governance. If these measures are enacted and we continue to move forward with the G20 process, we will have the kind of global governance that is necessary to ensure the stability and transparency of markets in a way that gives us the benefits of a globalized market economy without the enormous risks that...
Standing there with my people, they were bombed, and I was just targeted like them, and as elected president, official in charge of their protection, I couldn't do anything about it. But the point here is, it's not about me, it's about the idea of freedom. It's about the future of the whole region. It's about the future of Europe and a new world order.
The transatlantic partnership was never just the foundation of our security. It was the foundation of our way of life. It was forged an experience of the most bitter and anguished kind. Out of it came a new Europe, a new world order, a new consensus as to how life should and could be lived. The pieces are in flux. Soon they will settle again. Before they do, let us reorder this world around us.
I think a new world order is emerging, and with it the foundations of a new and progressive era of international cooperation. We have resolved that from today we will together manage the process of globalization to secure responsibility from all and fairness to all. And we've agreed that in doing so, we will build a more sustainable and more open and a fairer global society. All these new challenges are bringing together about the biggest restructuring we have ever seen, not just of the global economy, but of the global order as a whole. And 200 years ago, a famous British Foreign Secretary said that the new world had been called into existence to redress the balance of the old. In 1990, another old world ended, dominated by the Cold War, and people talked then, in 1990, of a new world order. What they actually meant then was a new political order. And what was not foreseen then, but is obvious now from everything that we see and do, what we experience in every day of our life, is the sheer scale and speed and scope of globalization. And it's only now that we can begin to understand that the world order that globalization brings and what it's going to look like, it's driven forward now not just by the balance of military strength, the Cold War times, or ordinary political power. It's being driven forward by a seismic shift in economic power that we see around us. But what does the New World Order mean for countries like ours who are looking to succeed? I suggest that the countries that are going to succeed are those that combine flexibility, free trade, open markets, with proper stewardship of the environment and investment in education, infrastructure and innovation. And the question for us is how we meet and master all these challenges to ensure that Britain enhances its competitiveness in the process and realizes what I believe is our destiny of success in this new world order. So, in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, a new world is emerging. It is a new world order with significantly different and radically new challenges for the future. But today, with Asia already outproducing Europe, India and China are clearly becoming part of our new order.
The world that maybe some people dreamt of at that conference back in Bournemouth, when it looked as if maybe history would end, that liberal democracy would triumph, that free market economics would slowly progress, and we'd have a new world order.
Ted, what do you think America's place in the new world order should be? It's always been seen as the global policeman. But as you said before, it's hard to see with all these military conflicts where the winner and loser lies. What should America be doing
I think
globally?
The global policeman should be the United Nations.
What sort of a financial deal should Obama be seeking to strike when he travels to China next month?
I think this would be the time, because you really need to bring China into the creation of a new world order, financial world order.
What do you think the most important thing is for Barack Obama? Obviously, you're here to talk about the anniversary for U.S.-China diplomatic relations, but if you had to say this is going to be the country or the conflict or the place that will define the Obama administration, what would it be?
The president-elect is coming into office at a moment when there are upheavals in many parts of the world simultaneously. You have India, Pakistan, you have the jihadist movement. So he can't really say there is one problem that is the most important one. But he can give a new impetus to American foreign policy, partly because the reception of him is so extraordinary around the world. I think his task will be to develop an overall strategy for America in this period when really a new world order can be created. It's a great opportunity. It isn't just a crisis. There's a need for a new world order, but it has different characteristics in different parts of the world.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again. And the institutions and the rules that worked so well in the post-World War II era for decades, they need to be strengthened.
The way we're going to win over the long term is not just militarily. We've got to win over hearts and minds. And what that means is we've got to invest in countries that have no educational infrastructure, have no means for young people to get ahead. We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
I mean, there is a conflict about what the mission is. The United States says that Gaddafi must go. Members of the coalition say this is strictly a humanitarian mission. How can the coalition work together when they can't agree on what the goals are?
Trump.
I was certainly referring to the threats that we are now facing with this stated goals of this administration, which would upset the last 70 years of a new world order, which was established after World War II. 70 years based on human rights, respect for the law, free trade, all of the things, aspects of this world order that took place after one of the most horrific, terrible wars in history. And I'm for maintaining it, and I'm afraid that it's under assault from a variety of forces, including, by the way, the Russians.
The affirmative task we have now is to actually create a new world order, because the global order is changing again, and the institutions and the rules that worked so well in the post-World War II era for decades, they need to be strengthened.
There can be no real peace while one American is dying someplace in the world for the rest of us. We're at war with the most dangerous enemy that has ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said if we lose that war, and in so doing lose this way of freedom of ours, history will record with the greatest astonishment that those who had the most to lose did the least to prevent its happening. Well, I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.